Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to talk about buying a home in McHenry, Illinois?
Always ready to talk about McHenry real estate. And today we're diving deep into a topic that's super relevant for a lot of buyers out there.
FHA loans.
Exactly.
We've got a ton of insights to share from Michael Linton.
A true McHenry expert.
He's been a broker in the area for, get this, 38 years.
38 years. That's not a typo. He really knows his stuff. And he's got this fantastic website, McHenryAgent.com, where he shares a wealth of information.
So think of this deep dive as your shortcut to McHenry home buying savvy. We're taking Michael's local expertise and breaking it down for you.
And what's really interesting is how FHA loans, which are designed to make homeownership more accessible, actually play out in McHenry's unique market.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. For anyone who's new to this whole FHA thing, can you give us a quick rundown?
Sure. So FHA loans are basically mortgages that are insured by the Federal Housing Administration. And that government backing allows lenders to offer more flexible terms to borrowers.
Flexible like how?
Well, one of the biggest perks is the lower down payment requirement. With an FHA loan, you might be able to put down as little as 3.5% compared to the 20% that's often needed with conventional loans. That's huge.
Huge is right.
Yeah.
Especially in a place like McHenry, where, let's face it, housing costs aren't exactly cheap.
Exactly. And it's not just about the down payment. FHA loans also tend to have more lenient credit score requirements, which can be a game changer for some buyers.
So if you've had a few bumps in your credit history, FHA might be a good option to explore. It's like a little more forgiving.
Right. Exactly. And Michael really emphasizes that this isn't just generic FHA advice. It's about how those loans work specifically in McHenry, because real estate isn't one size fits all, right?
So we're getting that local knowledge. And speaking of local, here's a fun fact from Michael. When people think McHenry, they often picture those beautiful lake houses.
Right on the water?
But Michael says it's actually the Fox River that really defines the area.
It's true. The Fox River kind of winds its way through the heart of McHenry, and it dictates a lot about property values, the overall vibe of different neighborhoods, even what kinds of homes you'll find.
It totally changes your perspective.
It does.
You're not just thinking lake life. You're thinking river town charm. So, okay, we've set the stage a bit. We know FHA loans can be a good fit for some buyers, but why is FHA such a big deal in McHenry specifically? What makes it a good fit for this market? Well, Michael breaks it down into three major advantages for McHenry buyers, and it all comes down to making those homes more attainable. So advantage number one.
Those lower down payments.
Right, we touched on that a little bit earlier.
Huge, huge hurdle for a lot of buyers, especially in a market like McHenry.
Yeah, because, I mean, McHenry's got a lot to offer, but I imagine housing costs could make a 20% down payment. Ouch, right.
It's a big chunk of change.
Yeah, and it's not just the down payment.
No.
What's advantage number two?
Flexibility on credit scores.
Yeah.
So FHA loans tend to be a bit more forgiving. If you've had a few bumps in the road, you know, life happens. Credit scores aren't always a perfect picture of someone's financial situation.
Right, and everyone's got a story. All right, and number three.
Often, FHA loans have very competitive interest rates.
Which is huge.
Especially right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we talk about affordability, obviously the listing price that you see on a house, that's only one piece of the puzzle.
Right, you got to factor in those interest rates, property taxes.
Property taxes. A lot of first-time buyers don't even think about that.
I know, Michael says that all the time. They get so focused on the down payment, but then those property taxes hit, and it's like, whoa, didn't budget for that.
Yeah. So what are we talking here? Give us a reality check. What kind of property taxes are we looking at in McHenry?
Well, it really varies, which is why local knowledge is so important.
Okay.
Because you could be looking at two houses that are the same price, but in different towns, and the property taxes could be significantly different.
Okay, so give us some examples.
All right, so let's say you're looking in, I don't know, Huntley, for example. Nice area, right?
Yeah.
You find a cute Cape Cod, everything looks good on paper, but then you find out the property taxes are, like, way higher than you expected.
Okay, so Huntley, higher property taxes potentially. Got it. What about somewhere like, I don't know, what about Johnsburg? What are we talking about there?
Johnsburg. You're going to want to factor in those property taxes as well. It's not as simple as saying, oh, this town always has high taxes, this one's always low.
It's more nuanced than that.
It really is. And this is where, again, that local expertise is so valuable. Because a good agent can say, okay, you're interested in a 3-bedroom in this price range. Here's what you can expect in terms of property taxes in different neighborhoods.
So you can kind of play it out and see what actually fits your budget.
Exactly.
So you're not blindsided later.
Because the last thing you want is to fall in love with a house and then realize you can't actually afford the monthly payments because of the property taxes.
Totally. So when it comes to FHA loans specifically, and this whole debt-to-income ratio thing, what's the deal with that?
So that's another area where FHA loans can be more forgiving because they take into account that you might have those higher property taxes in certain parts of McHenry.
Okay, so remind us again, debt-to-income ratio, what is that?
Basically, it's how much of your income is going towards debt payments each month. So your mortgage payment, your car payment, credit card bills, student loans, all that fun stuff.
All the adulting bills?
Exactly. And lenders use that ratio to assess how risky of a borrower you are. So if you've got a high debt-to-income ratio, they might be hesitant to give you a loan.
Because it basically means you have less wiggle room in your budget if something unexpected comes up.
Right, like a sudden home repair. Or maybe you want to take that dream vacation.
You got to prioritize.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been throwing around this term affordability.
Yes, key term.
But let's get down to brass tacks here.
No.
When we talk about FHA loans, there are actual loan limits in place, right? So even if you qualify for a certain loan amount based on your income and credit score, there's a cap on how much you can actually borrow through FHA.
Exactly, and those limits are set by the Federal Housing Administration.
Okay, so what are those magic numbers?
Well, they actually change every year. So what worked for your cousin's barber last year might not fly in 2024.
It's always evolving. That's why we love doing these deep dives.
Right, got to stay updated. So for a single-family home in McHenry County, the FHA loan limit for 2024 is $498,257.
$498,257.
Yeah.
All right, so just shy of that $500,000 mark. But what if you're dreaming a little bit bigger? What if you're thinking, you know what, I want a duplex. I'm going to live on one side, rent out the other side, be a landlord. I've always wanted to. What about those FHA loan limits for a two-family home?
Duplex, great question. That limit jumps up to $637,950 in McHenry County for 2024.
Okay.
And if you're feeling really ambitious, a four-family home goes all the way up to $958,350.
Wow. Okay, so those are some serious numbers. Now, before anyone gets too excited and rushes off to put an offer on that McHenry mansion, it's important to remember these are just upper limits.
Exactly. It doesn't automatically mean you'll get approved for that full amount.
Right. Your financial picture still matters, your credit score, debt-to-income ratio, all of that good stuff.
It all comes into play. You know, a lot of people think these loan limits are like a guarantee, like, oh, I make X amount of money, so I automatically qualify to borrow the full limit, but it's not that simple.
It's just one piece of the puzzle.
That's right.
It's like having a budget for your house hunt.
Yeah.
So you go in knowing like, okay, this is the max we can borrow. Let's see what's out there. But now you've got to shop smart. You've got to stay within your means.
Exactly. Think of those limits as your guardrails. They're there to help you, not to limit you.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it makes total sense, right? Because the last thing you want is to get caught up in the excitement of house hunting, fall in love with a property that's way outside your price range, and then have to start the whole process over again.
Heartbreak.
It is. So stay within your FHA loan limits, work with a great local lender who can guide you through the process, and remember, you've got this.
Absolutely. You're well on your way to finding that perfect McHenry home.
So we've talked a lot about the ins and outs of FHA loans, the advantages, those all-important loan limits. But I think it's time for a good old-fashioned pros and cons list.
I love a good list.
Because, let's be real, not every loan program is created equal.
Totally. What works for one buyer might not be the best fit for another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you might be thinking, why wouldn't I just go all in on FHA?
It seems like the easier path.
It's got the lower down
The
payment.
credit flexibility.
Sign me up. Right.
Right.
But, as always, there are two sides to every coin. So let's explore that flip side a bit. Let's talk about conventional loans and how they compare to FHA loans, specifically in the McHenry market.
Let's do it. And just to be clear, we're not saying one is better than the other.
Absolutely not.
It's all about finding the right fit for your individual needs and goals, like picking the perfect pair of shoes.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
You got your running shoes for when you're, going for your morning jog along the Fox River.
Yeah.
You've got your fancy shoes for when you're out on the downtown McHenry, right?
Date night.
Date night, exactly.
You got to have options.
Options are key.
And just like you wouldn't wear your running shoes to a fancy dinner, you don't want to just jump into any mortgage without considering all your options.
So let's break it down. FHA versus conventional loans, McHenry edition. First up, that all-important down payment. We already know FHA can be as low as 3.5%. What are we looking at for conventional loans in McHenry these days?
So with conventional loans, you're typically looking at a down payment between 5 and 20%, depending on the specific loan program and, of course, your financial situation.
So potentially a much bigger chunk of change,
Oh, yeah.
especially if you're a first-time homebuyer in McHenry,
Mm-hmm.
you're just starting out, you're trying to build up your savings.
Every dollar counts. And this is where, again, working with a knowledgeable local lender can make a world of difference because they can walk you through those different loan options, help you compare the numbers, and figure out what's going to be the most financially savvy choice for you.
So don't be afraid to ask questions. Shop around.
Yes, be an informed borrower.
All right, so down payment, check. What about credit score flexibility? We know FHA can be a bit more forgiving in that department. What about conventional loans?
So conventional loans do tend to have stricter credit score requirements. If you've got a credit score of 740 or higher, you're generally considered low risk, which means you're more likely to snag a better interest rate. But if your score is a bit lower, you might be facing higher interest rates or even get denied altogether.
So it's all about weighing those trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have excellent credit, maybe a conventional loan could save you money in the long run. But if you're still working on building up your credit history, FHA might be the better option to get your foot in the door of that McHenry dream home.
Exactly. It's about knowing your own financial situation and making the choice that aligns with your goals.
Mm.
And speaking of goals, remember those debt-to-income ratios we talked about?
Oh, those ratios. They're back to haunt us.
They're important.
They are important. So how do FHA and conventional loans compare in McHenry when it comes to those ratios?
So generally speaking, FHA loans might give you a little more wiggle room with those ratios, which we already know can be crucial in parts of McHenry where property taxes are a bit higher. But again, it's always best to talk to a lender to see what they say based on your specific financial situation. Don't just assume.
Because every situation is different.
Absolutely.
All right, so another difference to consider is seller contributions. Fill us in. What are those? Yeah, I know sometimes I hear that term and I'm like, wait, what is that?
So basically, it's when the seller of a home chips in to help cover some of the buyer's closing costs. It can be a great way to make a property more affordable for the buyer, especially in a competitive market.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like a little bonus.
Yeah.
So how do seller contributions work with FHA versus conventional loans in McHenry?
So with an FHA loan, sellers in McHenry can contribute up to 6% of the sale price towards the buyer's closing costs, which, let's be real, 6% of a home price in McHenry, that's not chump change.
No, it's not.
That
Yeah.
could be the difference between you being able to afford those new stainless steel appliances or, finally getting that backyard patio you've always dreamed of.
Living the McHenry dream. Okay, so seller contributions, definitely a point in favor of FHA loans. But it can't all be sunshine and roses, right?
Yeah.
What are the potential downsides of FHA loans in McHenry?
Okay, so let's flip that coin over and talk about those potential drawbacks. Because yes, while FHA loans offer some amazing advantages, there are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay, let's hear them.
So one of the biggest things that often gets overlooked with FHA loans is mortgage insurance.
Ah, yes, mortgage insurance, everyone's favorite topic. So for those of us who might be unfamiliar, what is mortgage insurance? And how does it work with FHA loans?
So mortgage insurance is basically an insurance policy that protects the lender if you, the borrower, default on your loan.
Okay, so it's like an extra layer of security for them.
Exactly. And with FHA loans, you're required to pay for both upfront mortgage insurance premiums, which you pay when you close on the loan, and then annual premiums that get added to your monthly mortgage payments.
Okay, so those mortgage insurance costs are definitely something to factor in when you're crunching the numbers. Because even though FHA loans might have those lower down payment requirements, you don't want to forget about those extra costs that come along with them.
Exactly. It's all about looking at the big picture.
All right, so mortgage insurance, noted.
And then the other big one to keep in mind is FHA property standards.
Okay, property standards, what's the deal with those?
So FHA loans come with these specific requirements for the properties they'll finance. These standards are designed to make sure the home is safe, it's livable, and it's a sound investment for both the borrower and the lender.
Okay, so it's about making sure that the property meets certain basic requirements. Got it. How do these FHA property standards play out in McHenry specifically?
So this is where those standards can get a little bit tricky, especially in McHenry, where you've got a good mix of older homes and newer construction.
Right, so you've got those charming older homes, maybe a little bit of that historic charm, but they might also come with, shall we say, some quirks.
Quirks, we love them, but they can be expensive.
They can be.
So, for example, if you're eyeing that adorable Victorian in Richmond, You're going to want to make sure it meets those FHA property standards. Things like the roof, the foundation, the electrical system, they've all got to be in good working order.
Makes sense. You don't want any surprises.
Exactly. And this is where having a seasoned realtor like Michael, who knows the ins and outs of McHenry's housing stock, can be invaluable
They're true.
because they can help you navigate those potential pitfalls and maybe even steer you towards properties that are more likely to sail through that FHA appraisal.
All right, so FHA property standards, definitely something to keep on your radar, especially if you're drawn to those older homes with character. You might need to factor in some extra renovation costs to get them up to snuff.
Exactly. It's all about being prepared and informed. And that's why we love to do these deep dives, to arm you with the knowledge you need to make smart decisions.
Because knowledge is power,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to something as important as buying a home. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from those FHA basics to the nitty-gritty of property standards. But I think it's time for some actionable advice.
Let's do it.
What are your top tips for anyone who's thinking, okay, FHA sounds like a good fit for me. I'm ready to start this McHenry home buying journey.
Yeah.
What do they need to know?
All right. So tip number one, and Michael stresses this over and over again, get pre-approved.
Always good advice.
Hmm.
But why is pre-approval especially crucial in McHenry?
Well, McHenry's a popular place to live, right? So the market can be pretty competitive. When you've got that pre-approval in hand, it shows sellers you're serious, you're qualified, you're ready to make a move. And in a multiple offer situation, that can give you a real edge.
So it's like showing up to a house hunt with your game face on.
Exactly. Be prepared to play. Okay, tip number two, don't underestimate those mortgage insurance costs.
Ah, yes, mortgage insurance, always a fun topic, but seriously, it's easy to overlook those costs when you're focused on the down payment and the listing price.
Right, but those premiums can really add up over time, so make sure you're factoring them into your budget from the get-go.
It's all about avoiding those unpleasant financial surprises down the road.
Exactly. Okay, tip number three. This one is especially for those of you who are charmed by those older homes, those fixer-uppers.
We love a good fixer-upper.
They have so much character. But before you sign on the dotted line, get a thorough home inspection.
Always good advice.
Even if it means spending a little extra up front, trust me, it's worth it. Because the last thing you want is to move into your dream home only to discover a laundry list of repairs that weren't caught during the appraisal.
Yeah, those hidden costs can really sneak up on you.
Exactly. And then one final bonus tip, don't forget about down payment assistance programs.
Oh yeah, those can be a lifesaver. What's the deal with down payment assistance in McHenry?
So McHenry County might have programs that can help you with that down payment. These programs are designed to make homeownership more accessible, especially for first-time buyers. So it's definitely worth looking into.
It's like unlocking a secret level of home buying.
Yeah.
You know, this is where having a local expert like Michael is so valuable.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just about knowing those general FHA guidelines, right?
Right. It's about understanding the nuances of the McHenry market, knowing which neighborhoods might have those higher property taxes, which lenders are more FHA friendly, where to find those hidden gem properties that are just waiting for the right buyer to come along.
It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket.
Exactly.
And speaking of secret weapons, folks, don't forget to check out Michael's website, McHenryAgent.com. He's got a treasure trove of information on there about McHenry real estate.
It's like a masterclass in McHenry home buying.
It really is. But we would be remiss if we didn't mention that every buyer's situation is unique. What works for one person might not be the best fit for another. So take all this information, do your research, talk to the experts, and most importantly, trust your gut.
You got this. You're well on your way to McHenry homeownership.
That's it for today's deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another adventure in knowledge and exploration. Happy house hunting.